Richard, and this is Lap of the World, your home for road trips and racetracks. Now, I am very close to actually getting back to that namesake channel purpose, but I don't have any dates yet, so stay tuned for that. However, in the meantime, after I did the last video, kind of intending for that to be the wrap-up of the stereo refresh saga, when I was editing that, I was like, I actually left out probably some pretty key information that might be of interest to you, the viewers, if you were to run into the same problem with your NSX or some other similar Bose system in a different car. And that was, first thing, an actual cost breakdown of what I now have invested in this project, as well as an actual comparison with a more modern OEM stereo. How does a 1991 spec Bose system stack up against, say, something modern from like VW Group, say? So that's what we have in store for you today. First thing, we're out for a drive, so I figure I could talk money while we're on the road here. So, what is the tale of the tape and the butcher's bill with respect to me having now reconstituted my stereo in the NSX? Well, it started with the speaker amp refresh. That is normally, for all three speaker amps, a $270 service. Very reasonable in comparison to buying new ones. Unfortunately, in my case, it ended up being $490 because two of my amps had already been replaced with knockoff amps basically, and therefore couldn't be repaired through the same service. So I had to buy some cores at an additional expense. Fortunately, Brian had the cores available, so I was able to actually continue with the project versus being back to the drawing board. And that is still far cheaper than the dealer option, I'll say. But moving on from that, the next expense I had was, after I discovered that these speakers had also failed, was about $71, I believe, $68 for the three replacement Bose 901 series speakers. Now, you might be able to dumpster dive for those at a pull apart type, pick apart type junkyard, because they did cross reference, to some other similar vintage cars. But just know you can get new ones for $30 a piece or whatever I paid for those. Now, next on the list we had $71 for the JL line driver that I ended up using, and then $14 roughly for the USB adapter, and then I think another $35 or so in assorted cables, adapters, and connectors to complete the job. Some of those I had to go and get. I didn't have enough of them laying around to finish what I was doing and have everything be the same from a connector continuity standpoint. Not electrical continuity. I just like everything to be the same. A little bit of, it's probably my OCD showing, but it is what it is. So my grand total for this was just over $700, which, that's on the steep side. However, when you compare it to any ready-made off-the-shelf solutions, it's still a relative bargain. Now, if you were to do this and somebody's drunk uncle hadn't already replaced your speaker amps with some random junk they found on eBay, then you probably could get out for less than $500. I think my estimate came up at about $480, $490 all in, which I think is still cheaper than, that's still cheaper than even a single high-end head unit if you were just going that route. But so from that perspective, it still made a little bit more sense than it did for me to replace, to go and gut everything and go completely modern, because I would spend $800 alone on a replacement console with a double den cutout to accommodate some kind of modern screen-based system. That's not what I'm about. So I wanted to share that with you just as kind of a data point in the range of what you could expect if you decided to take on a similar project yourself. Obviously, if you decide to go with different componentry, you might be able to cut a corner or two here and there if you know what you're doing. So, yeah, there you go. I spent about a little over $700. You could expect to spend less than $500 if your speaker amps are still original and repairable. So for the second part of this video, I'm going to do what we didn't do in the past video. So in the last video, we just listened to the stereo while we were driving using the binaural setup, so you guys could sort of virtually go for a ride with me. It's because we were most interested in what the stereo system was going to sound like on the road, because it's probably where you're going to be listening to it 99.9% of the time. There might be some collector out there that goes out in his garage and listens to his car stereo while sitting there not driving the car. He's afraid to put miles on, but that's not really our thing. So, so we went out and drove the car to see what it sounded like. But for comparative purposes of this speaker system, 1991 spec Bose layout, versus something more modern, I thought it would be useful to test things kind of in a vacuum. So that's what we're going to do. We are going to, with no motors running or anything and taking that variable out, we're going to go listen to the NSX's stereo system with no other noises, and then we'll listen to a couple of other car stereo systems playing the same song just to see where things stand. I thought it could be an interesting data point, but to accomplish that, we are going back to the studio. Alright, so we are now back in the studio here, and we are in the NSX to start with. Hopefully you have your headphones on, because this does begin the binaural audio portion of the video. So, I'm going to be playing a song from my iPod, and we're going to then test it in a couple of other cars as well. The song may not be to everyone's taste, but I feel it does a good job of sort of hitting a lot of different dynamic ranges, and it has a cool little stereo effect at the beginning. So, without further ado, though, here we go. Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah. Yeah.
Alright, so you now find yourself in a 2013 Volkswagen GTI Wolfsburg edition, and we're going to play the same song from, in fact, the same iPod through an aux connection. So it is about as fair a comparison as I can manage, with the caveat that I'm kind of guessing on the volume. But with no further ado, though, here we go.
Have you ever felt? Are you listening? Damn.
Alright, and we are now in the cabin of my 2004 Lamborghini Gallardo. Now, this one I am having to cheat a little bit because I don't have a 3.5mm aux in, so this is getting Bluetoothed from my phone. Here we go.
Have you ever felt? Are you listening? Damn.
So for as much as people like to poop on the factory system in the Gallardo, this isn't actually that bad. So I'll reserve judgment and let you do the, I'll let you guys do the judging. So I hope you've enjoyed this quick cost breakdown and comparison video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe down below. That helps me out a ton, and I do appreciate everyone who has already subscribed, as we just recently crossed the 2,000 subscription threshold, which, you know, in YouTube terms, it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's really, you know, that's like the population of my entire high school that actually cares about something I'm doing, which is awesome, you know, unlike back when I was in high school. But I guess at least I didn't peak then, right? Anyway, thank you all for your support. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and please consider subscribing and tagging along for future episodes. Until those happen, though, I am Richard, this is Lap of the World, and I will see all of you in the next video, if not at the track.